Welcome to Family History Mysteries, a podcast that tells the stories uncovered through family history research, the unexpected stories of everyday people. I am an avid family historian who has been compiling my family tree for over 15 years, with nearly 20,000 people recorded in my trees. And please put a review on my podcast. That will certainly help in getting the word out there and creating more listenership. Shorts episode number 26. Thomas Hardinge. Thomas Henry Hardinge was born on the 29th of March 1854 in Hampstead, Middlesex, England. He married Kate Wilde on the 15th of December 1881 in Adelaide. Kate Wilde had been married prior. Her maiden name was Milnes. Thomas was a hydraulic engineer and a commission agent at the time of their marriage. After their marriage, they lived in Adelaide for 2 years and then near Launceston in Tasmania until February 1888, and then in North Carlton in Victoria until July 1888. They lived in Brighton until August 1889, and then the couple separated. Just prior to their separation on the 11th of July 1889 in the Daily News in Perth, Western Australia, the following contract has been made. A contract on the 28th of May 1889 between Thomas Henry Hardinge of Collins Street, East Melbourne, and Edward Herbert Crossman of Sydney Solicitor. In August 1889, Thomas told his wife that he was in difficulties and would have to go to America, and under that pretense, he left their home. But instead of going to America, he proceeded to Sydney and then cohabited with Clara Parker, a married woman, and then afterwards went to America. There was a mystery man that was reported in Melbourne that had secured the funds in order to release her from jail, and she went missing. After they returned from America, they continued to live together in Victoria. So it seems that Thomas started his relationship with Clara Parker in Sydney in August 1889, and then in America in October 1889, and then in October 1890 at a boarding house kept by Mr. Salter in Richmond, Victoria. In December 1891 and January 1892, they lived at the Bridge Hotel in South Melbourne and the Prince of Wales Hotel in Frankston, and in April 1893 lived at Cranbourne. On the 12th of April 1893 in the Adelaide Express and Telegraph. The Parker-Clark action. Evidence for the defence. Signatures declared forgeries. Mr. Purvis threatened. In Melbourne on the 11th of April. The action for alleged malicious prosecution instituted by Mrs. Clara Parker against Mr. Joshua Clark still continues to attract a large audience at the Supreme Court. Evidence was given on behalf of the defence that the endorsements on the bills were unmistakably forgeries of Mr. Clark's signature. William Howard, an accountant in the employ of Clark, declared the signatures to be forgeries. On cross-examination, the witness said Mr. Clark was not as gay as some gentlemen in his position. He knew that after the release of Mrs. Parker's £50 was paid to her on behalf of Mr. Clark to prevent her annoying the latter by issuing a writ for £5,000. When the court resumed after lunch, Mr. Purvis, QC, complained that immediately after the rising of the court, an individual followed him and in a most offensive fashion stared into his face. Mr. Purvis asked him what his business was, and the man said he wanted to have a look at him because he intended to settle it with him immediately the case was over. On being asked his name, the man said Hardinge and repeated his threat. Mr. Purvis had no personal fear in the matter, but he thought it was a gross contempt of court. His Honour ordered the man to remain in court and also to get into the witness box. In reply to His Honour, he said his name was Thomas Henry Hardinge. He was staying at the Queensbridge Hotel. His Honour then ordered him to attend at the termination of the case when he would be sworn and examined in connection with the matter. And on the 15th of April 1893 in the Adelaide South Australian Chronicle, the action against Mr. Joseph Clark in Melbourne. The hearing of the action brought by Mrs. Clara Parker against Mr. Joseph Clark for £10,000 damages for malicious prosecution was resumed today. Mr. Purvis severely cross-examined the plaintiff, who admitted that she lived with Mr. Thomas Hardinge as his wife in America. She stated that when the defendant signed the bills, they were in her bedroom at Richmond.
They went there at the defendant's request, but nothing immoral was proposed. In re-examination, Mrs. Parker admitted to Mr. Duffy that Mr. Joseph Clark was the first to seduce her from her allegiance to her husband. The witness broke down while giving evidence and left the court sobbing loudly. And on the 17th of April 1893 in the Hobart Mercury, 2 more incidents have contributed to make the Clara Parker versus Joseph Clark action more than ordinarily spicy. Mr. Purvis QC has appeared as a witness for the defence. He conducted himself in a novel position in a manner which would have drawn upon him his own wrath, could he only have acted in 2 capacities at once and cross-examined himself. His attitude in the box was, to say the least, easy, and it would have been an interesting sight could it have been possible to have seen Mr. Purvis QC straighten up Mr. Purvis the witness. There was an interesting encounter between the witness and Mr. Duffy for the plaintiff, who experienced great difficulty in compelling Mr. Purvis to answer questions before he gave explanations and to reply with a direct yes or no. In addition to other faults, the witness gave his name in an undertone, and Mr. Duffy ejaculated, "Now, sir, be good enough to speak up so the jury can hear you." Harding was then called into court. He gave his name as Thomas Henry Harding and was ordered by Mr. Justice Williams to come up and be examined in reference to the matter when called on. On the previous day, the QC had referred to Harding as the man in the moon, the paramour of Mrs. Parker. And on the 19th of August 1893 in the Wagga Wagga Express, the Parker divorce case in Cranbourne, Thomas Henry Harding, who figured as a co-respondent in the divorce case of Parker versus Parker held in Melbourne on Tuesday, was this morning arrested at Cranbourne by Constable McKee on a warrant charging him with unlawfully deserting his wife, Kate Harding, who resides in Melbourne. Harding, who is described as an engineer, is 35. Since the action of Mrs. Parker against Mr. Joseph Clark, Harding and Mrs. Parker have occupied a house 2 miles from Cranbourne and have frequently been seen together in the district. On the 10th of July, Mrs. Harding swore on information against Harding, and Constable McKee, noticing the police gazette that there was a warrant out, telegraphed to Melbourne for it in order to arrest the accused. The day previous to the arrival of the warrant, Harding and Mrs. Parker went to town, but returned to Cranbourne Wednesday night. This morning, Harding had intended to again proceed to Melbourne and was driving to the railway station when he was arrested by Constable McKee. He was brought up by Mr. Robert Gibb, JP, and he was remanded to appear in the City Court in Melbourne on the 24th. Harding was subsequently admitted to bail on a surety of £25. Later on in the day, in company with Mrs. Parker, he left by road for Dandenong to proceed to Melbourne. And on the 1st of June 1896, in the Sydney Evening News, in the Melbourne Divorce Court on Monday, Kate Harding sought a divorce from her husband, Thomas Henry Harding, on the ground of desertion. The petitioner stated she was married to the respondent in Adelaide on the 15th of December 1881. There they lived 2 years, then went to Tasmania and lived there for 5 years, and then came to Victoria. They resided in Carlton and then at Middle Brighton. He represented to her he was in financial difficulties and said he was going to America on business, so the furniture and effects were sold to provide him with the means to reach America. He promised to write and then left. He did not write, however, and in 1889 she heard he was living with another woman in Sydney. She lost sight of her husband for several years when he reappeared in Melbourne. She then had him arrested for wife desertion, and an order was made by the City Police Court for payment of 15 shillings a week maintenance. The respondent paid 2 weeks when the payment ceased, and he disappeared from Melbourne and has not been seen since. A decree nisi was granted. Thomas Harding married Emma Meek in Perth in 1897 when he was 43 and Emma 27. The Perth West Australian announced the marriage on the 3rd of April 1897. On the 29th of March at St George's Cathedral in Perth, Thomas Henry Harding of Perth, Western Australia, son of the late Thomas Horton Harding, M.A. of Regent's Park and Thurlow Square, London, to Emma, second daughter of Arthur Meek of Wellington, New Zealand, formerly of Brighton, England. They had 2 children, Henry and Florence Jane. Florence was stillborn in January 1898 and Doris in April 1900. A month after the twins were born in the Perth West Australian, Notice is hereby given that the partnership existing between Walter Francis Croft and Thomas Henry Hardinge, under the style of Croft, Hardinge and Co. in Perth, estate agents, has been dissolved by mutual consent, and the firm will be received and paid by in the future by Thomas Henry Hardinge. And on the 2nd of April 1912, in the West Australian, dissolution of partnership. The partnership existing between Thomas Henry Hardinge and Maurice Dillon, trading as Hardinge and Dillon Farmers in Tamman, has by mutual consent been dissolved on the 14th of March 1912. In 1925, Thomas was farming at 2J in Western Australia, and he died there on the 19th of January 1929 at the age of 74. In the 2J Herald, it announced his death. The death occurred at 2J Hospital on the 19th of January of Mr. Thomas Henry Hardinge. The late Mr. Hardinge came to 2J some 7 or 8 years ago, purchasing a farm which he conducted till last year. After disposing of his farm, Mr. Hardinge lived in retirement at the Cascades. He's survived by a widow and a grown-up family of 1 son and 1 daughter. And Emma died on the 30th of June 1945. Her death was announced in the Perth West Australian. On the 28th of June 1945 at Perth, Emma, widow of Thomas Henry Hardinge and beloved mother of Melville and Doris, Mrs. C.J. Puttick, mother-in-law of Ruby and Charles and grandmother of Eileen and Lorna. What became of Clara Amy Parker? Well, after her divorce from her husband, Edward Leonard Parker, in 1893, she married William Cameron in Melbourne in May 1894. So it seems that the affair that she had with Thomas Hardinge didn't last long after all of the media attention. However, on the 15th of September 1894, William Cameron left Clara Amy. It says William Cameron is charged on warrant with deserting his wife, Clara Amy Cameron, care of Mrs. Drew of Coburg, on the 7th. 45 years of age, 5 foot 4 inches high, medium build, dark complexion, black moustache, whiskers, beard turning grey, blue eyes, wore a brown tweed sack suit and black felt hat, has the English coat of arms tattooed on one of his arms. And after that point, I lose Clara, so I'm thinking that maybe she remarried, as I cannot find any further information on her. Thomas's children with Emma. His first was Henry Melville Hardinge. He was born on the 29th of January 1898 in Claremont, Western Australia. He farmed with his father at 2J and then enlisted in World War I in January 1916 in the field ambulance in Egypt and France. He returned to Australia in February 1919 and was discharged from the army in the May. He married Ruby Victoria Hounslow in Perth in 1927. They had 2 children, however they were both stillborn. In 1930 he was an electrician and he died on the 30th of December 1990 at Mount Lawley, Western Australia, aged 92. Doris Eileen Hardinge was born on the 5th of April 1900 in Claremont. She married Charles Puttick in Perth in June 1922. Charles was 10 years older than Doris. In 1952, it says Mrs. Doris Puttick, member of the Perth Guild, writes from London stating that she leaves for Western Australia on July the 1st. She's had an interesting trip to the continent, was Guild delegate to the conference of the British Commonwealth League in London. Mrs. Puttick recently attended a party at the Swedish Embassy in London, which was a great success and helped to increase funds for the International Alliance of Women. And Doris died on the 13th of June 2000 in South Perth. So it seems for Thomas Hardinge that despite the events of his first marriage and his affair with Clara May Parker, that he did settle down and seemed to have quite an ordinary life once he met and married Emma Meek.
If you are interested in sharing your story on my podcast Family History Mysteries, please go to my Facebook page and send me a message. If you would like some assistance in filling in the gaps in your family tree to see what mysteries you solve, please get in touch. And don't forget you can have early access to episodes by subscribing, and you'll also gain access to bonus episodes.